who's our co-host. And this morning we'll be talking with Dave Quast, who is the California Director of Energy, in depth, of course. Well, it's talking about fracking. It's in depth.
Yes.
So, good morning.
Great to be here. Good morning.
So let's talk about fracking. There's so many misnomers about it. I mean, we've been doing it for 60 years in Kern County. Nobody's said a word. Nothing has happened. Give me a little information on what is fracking.
Well, hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, is a routine, what we call well completion technique, which is something that's not drilling. It's done after drilling and after all the drilling apparatus is taken away, and it is the injection of fluid, which is 99.5% water with a little bit of sand, pumped at pressure at depth down around here, 10,000 feet down under the ground, to help to make hairline cracks into very tight rock formations to help stimulate the flow of hydrocarbons out of a formation.
Mostly shale, right?
Primarily shale, but not necessarily.
Okay, that's pretty deep.
Yeah, a couple of miles in many cases. Yeah, far away from groundwater aquifers and so on, which tend to be a couple hundred feet down.
I understand that you also, when you talked about the water, that you create water.
You do. I mean, there are actually some places in the state where oil and gas production is a net water producer. But in any case, whenever you're doing oil production, you're mostly doing water production. There are many times more gallons of water brought up than there are for any single gallon of oil. And that water is either treated, re-injected into the formation, injected as wastewater, or it's often treated and sold to agriculture, for example, for irrigation.
Yeah, they treat it here.
Yeah.
Kern County.
That's right.
Yes.
The idea of fracking has got so many wrong things that people are thinking about it. Fracking is really, when it's that deep, it's not going to interfere with anything. I didn't realize it was down a couple miles.
Yeah.
I didn't either. I didn't know it was that far.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, there's nothing in the world is risk-free, and that's why we have lots of regulations around the process.
You're in California.
Because we also have, exactly. This is
Lots of
California, and there is a well involved, and so there's the distance between the well head and the frack job itself. But we're fortunate, I think, to live in a very environmentally conscious state, and we have probably the strictest regulations in the country. In fact, regulations that were so strict, in fact, the ones that were just passed this last year, SB4, were so strict that the industry ultimately couldn't support them because they went so far beyond hydraulic fracturing. But nevertheless, that's what we have. And the fears that environmental activists are trying to stir up are simply misplaced.
Well, you're in California. That's what you have, is environmental activists.
Mm-hmm.
They're everywhere. Mm-hmm. And they actually, I get the feeling from talking to several people about the activists that they really would like to have no oil production in the state, which is, how many gallons of oil do we make? There's in this, it's in here.
Well, we produce California refineries produce about 2 million gallons of gas and diesel per hour, to put it into some perspective.
And it's all used here in California, and it's only 40% of what we have to have.
That's
60% is coming from other places.
That's correct. Every single drop of oil that we produce in California, with one or two exceptions for refined product, is consumed here in California. And not only that, we don't make enough for our own population. And we have to import not only from other states, but from other countries.
Yeah, well, and we got things going on in other countries that don't look too exciting.
That's right.
I mean, you just had oil field taken over. They're in continual flux. So you need to get something, and we have more than a gallon of oil here. Mm-hmm. You need to have something that's going to pull it out of the rocks.
Yeah, exactly. So just for some perspective, because we're here in Bakersfield, 70% of the oil in California is produced in Kern County. A lot of the rest of it is produced in Los Angeles County. But this is really the center of oil production. And in fact, more than 90% of the hydraulic fracturing or fracking happens in Kern County. And this is where you don't see the activists being very active or being very vocal, because you all live with this every day. You have been since most people listening to this show were born. And it hasn't caused problems. You can see oil and agriculture living side by side, and it's not a problem. In Marin County, places like that, they're all very, very exercised about fracking, but of course they don't have any.
Yeah, well, they don't know.
Right.
So how long have we been doing fracking in California?
Since the 1950s, and in the country since the late 1940s. So Harry Truman, I think, was president when the first frack job happened.
Okay, so there is a strong, long history.
Yeah. And the only things that have changed are actually, because people talk about this being new or somehow novel, the only things that have changed are actually things that make the process less environmentally troubling. For example, horizontal drilling, which is something we don't do in California very much, but it's where you take the well and you go horizontally for a couple of miles once you get down to the shale or get down to the rock formation.
Oh,
so you only have one wellhead rather than, lots of wellheads like you might see in western Kern County. So it's, that's much better for not only just visually, but it's much better for wildlife and everything else.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you could have several branches off of the one main well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you would do that in fracking?
You could, although in California, because of our kind of unique geology and the fact that we have lots of faulting, we tend not to. Most of our wells are vertical. But back east where they're fracking for natural gas, yeah, they do have wells that when they have kind of horizontal shale strata that are consistent, they can go for several miles.
Oh, okay.
It produces a lot more energy and a lot less environmental footprint.
Yeah, well, when you have the gas going up, you're not burning coal and other things that are environmentally worse, so
Correct.
It's much better.
That helps with the greenhouse gases.
It does. The environmental activists don't really ultimately care about that, of course. I mean, you mentioned earlier, what do they really want? And the most honest of them actually admit that what they want to do is stop all fossil fuel development, even natural gas, which is 50% cleaner than coal, and want us to somehow switch off the switch from oil and natural gas and start using renewable energy exclusively tomorrow. But of course, you need conventional energy in order to make that transition. So it's going to be a long time before Californians don't need oil and gas.
And then we have to make sure it's done correctly, because some of the nuclear power plants, they've been going offline because they're having problems with them. So they got to develop something a little better. Mm-hmm. And that takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Could you mention what SB4 actually does to help protect the environment with the fracking?
Well, just to clarify one thing, too, because you hear a lot from activists that fracking has been unregulated and it's been this kind of Wild West sort of atmosphere. And again, California is the most heavily regulated state environmentally in the country. And everything that happens in oil and gas development, including fracking, has been regulated and it has been overseen by the Department of Conservation and the Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources. What we did last year is we passed additional regulation because of public concern about fracking to further and very specifically focus on that process, again, not as specifically as the industry wanted, but to ensure that there's even more transparency and that people understand what it is. So parts of SB4 include yet another independent science-based study on the process. There have been hundreds already, including a big one down at the Inglewood oil field in Los Angeles, but another one. The development of a comprehensive environmental impact report. Mandatory public disclosure of all the chemicals that are used in hydraulic fracturing, even though those chemicals have been disclosed voluntarily now for several years and are available online. Well integrity testing before and after hydraulic fracturing, the monitoring of protected groundwater through a groundwater monitoring plan, and even prior notification of surrounding landowners. So for something that's been routine and that's been going on right next door to us for all this time, those are significant regulations and things that should make anyone who's really concerned feel better, because they'll have full transparency and full information about it.
Well, I think it's amazing that when we talk about California, it's the third largest gasoline consuming market on Earth.
Correct.
Behind only the total United States as a whole and China.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Consume 41 million gallons of gasoline and 11 million gallons of diesel fuel a day.
Right.
That's true.
And we're not like Beijing, though. We don't have that atmosphere.
That's right. That's right. And that consumption isn't going to go away anytime soon. We have tens of millions of cars on the road. We need to keep our economy moving. And even as we are going to, no doubt, be getting more of our energy from other sources, we can't grind our economy to a halt. I mean, we are as you said, the third largest consumer in the world. That's kind of staggering.
Yeah, it is, for one state.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's huge. So, and if you had no gasoline, everything would really grind to a halt.
That's right. I've noticed the trucks don't run without diesel fuel.
They tend not to, that's right.
Yeah, it's amazing. All these big facts always amaze me. To supply the state's demand for fuel, California refineries produce 2 million gallons of gasoline and diesel fuel per hour every day, 365 days a year, and that's only 40% of what we need. And the market is growing.
Right. And we're the third largest energy producing state at this point. And Governor Brown has made very clear that we want to continue that, and we want to continue energy leadership. So the way to do that is to continue to produce here at home, but to find new ways to produce, to find ways to keep doing it with our strict environmental protections so that we're doing it in a responsible and safe way. But we need to meet this demand. And if we don't do it, we're going to be importing it from regimes that don't have the U.S.'s best interest at heart and places that, frankly, have worse environmental protections. So it would be a win-win for everyone if we could increase our domestic production.
Yeah, because it's already going up, and as it gets worse, it's going up even higher. We need to do this.
That's right.
To settle it back down.
Right.
And it's going to take a while. When you drill a hole in the earth 2 miles,
that takes a while.
Take more than a week.
Week and a half.
Yeah, but fracking, funnily enough, if we have time, it only takes a day or two. People talk a lot, activists talk a lot about, fracking rigs or fracking wells, and they put pictures online of, here's a frack job going on. That's almost never the case. Hydraulic fracturing involves a bunch of trucks pumping water. And in California, that takes 1 or 2 days. The trucks go away, and the well can produce for 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Whoa.
So it's not an ongoing it's not an ongoing process. It's a one-time thing in most cases.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. I thought it was a continual pumping in, pumping out.
Well, you would if you read the activist script. Yeah.
That's it. We're talking today with Dave Quast, and he's a father of 4 with triplets. That's a job and a half.
It is indeed.
And anyway, we'll be back in a minute. Pam Zulfa and Stan Ferguson from Coldwell Banker. Give us a call with any questions at 842-KERN.
Or 800-640-5376.
I hear the trailer coming, it's rolling around the bend.
Hey, I'm Bob.
And I'm Rob.
And we want you to listen to Trainwreck Radio Saturday mornings.
Trainwreck Radio.
It's something that your ears will not want to hear again.
It will be a delight.
I'm sorry, I got that wrong. It's something you're really going to want to listen to.
Don't miss it.
Okay, we're here. From 11 to 12 on Saturday.
On News Talk 1180, KERN.
Spring has sprung and love is in the air. And if you're planning a wedding, you need to turn to my friend Mike Arier, Big Mike's Raging Barbecue. Give him a call right now at 393-5507. Big Mike's Raging Barbecue is a full-service wedding planner. Mike handles it all. He'll create the perfect party from start to finish. From beautiful tablescape designs to the dishes, flatware, all the glasses, all the way down to the entire floral arrangement. And when you hire Big Mike's Raging Barbecue, you hire Mike Arier. You don't get some 19-year-old manager on site who doesn't have all the answers. Mike is there for the entire event, giving you a personal and professional experience in every task. Big Mike's Raging Barbecue is not just barbecue. It's seafood bars, oysters, crab, shrimp. He does all the main entrees, of course, steak, chicken, and even an entire pig. I'm not kidding. When you hire Big Mike's Raging Barbecue, you hire top quality food, personal on-site service, and one delicious barbecue. Who wouldn't want Big Mike's Raging Barbecue at their next party or event?
Hello, Bakersfield. I'm Bill Holt, and I run the finest security company in Kern County, Advanced Security at 589-9700. For those of you who have paid $99 for your security system, you have to ask yourself, are you, your family, and your property worth $99? Most of these systems, especially ones installed before 2012, can be defeated in 30 seconds or less with a BFH. And most of you are paying $35, $45, and $55 per month for your monthly service on a never-ending contract. How's that working for you? Advanced Security, on the other hand, is a local professional security company that has served Kern County since 1993. Our residential monthly monitoring rate starts at just $15, the lowest in Kern County. And you can cancel your contract in writing at any time. Check us out at advancedsecurity.biz. That's B-I-Z for one of the most experienced security companies in Kern County. Check us out by calling 589-9700 for an evaluation of your existing security system. And thank you for placing your trust in our company, Advanced Security, at 589-9700.
Whether you're a builder in town or a do-it-yourselfer, EA Shields is everything you need to help make your job easier and affordable. Like ready-mix concrete, rock and gravel, pipe and fittings. Yes, EA Shields has it, and they deliver. For bigger jobs, they rent bobcats, jackhammers, and trailers. EA Shields has been in the business since 1949. They make their own products, and they're your one-stop shop in septic system installation. Give them a call at 325 325-5969. That's 325-5969. If you don't want the best, then call the rest.
YourRadiostore.com is where you'll find discount deals on more items than anywhere.
Keep the kids busy with Taekwondo from Parks Taekwondo. The summer special is a $99 value for only $30.
Log on to YourRadiostore.com to grab tickets for great events, local restaurants, and hotel stays. Visit YourRadiostore.com and you'll find daily deals on more items than anywhere else. Save even more money every day by using YourRadiostore.com.
Hey, Mom, can we go rollerblading?
Oh, not tonight, sweetie. Maybe another night.
Mom, parents who spend time with their kids in their younger years have a better chance of being close to their kids in those difficult teen years. I'm 12 right now, and when I turn 13, I'll become a whole different person, someone you won't even know. I'll be a roller coaster of emotions. Sometimes so sweet, you wonder what my motives are. And sometimes I'll burst into tears because I can't find my biology book.
Okay.
And what about when I start dating and bring home some guy who wants to take me away to Burma and live in a yurt?
A what?
How are you going to deal with that if we're not close?
Get your blades, honey.
Give your family everything. Give them your time.
Mom, I can't find my rollerblade.
Oh, boy.
Who took my rollerblade?
Okay, calm down. We'll find it.
Just kidding.
From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
The bottom line is if the people are going to support it, they're going to also have to support it at the brick and mortar stores, at the gas stations. So now your 99-cent cheeseburger is now $3.25. So, nobody really has a challenge until it starts affecting their back end.
Taking Care of Business with Marty and Clay, Saturday afternoon at 1 on News Talk 1180 KERN, or listen online at KERNradio.com.
You're listening to the Real Estate Hour on KERN Radio. News Talk 1180. You can call in at 842-KERN or 800-640-KERN. Once again, Stan Ferguson.
Along with my co-host Pam Zulfa from the Global Banker, and we're talking this morning with Dave Quast, California Director of Energy in Depth, which means we're going to be talking about fracking. And one of the things that's always bothered me is that people say, well, we're going to get earthquakes. But the only time I've seen a problem is in the salt mines that are around Detroit, that they've had a problem with things collapsing. You don't have enough. You're putting stuff in, you don't have things that can collapse.
Yeah, I mean, we are the most earthquake-prone state in the country, obviously, and we've been producing oil and gas here for over 100 years. So if there were issues in that regard, especially with hydraulic fracturing, we'd be aware of instances where there was induced seismicity. The good news is that seismicity, or
I like that word. Write that one down, producer. We're going to use that a lot. Seismicity.
And the good news is, of course, for Californians, that not only again, is this an area that's heavily regulated, but the industry is, is peopled by scientists and engineers who are very, very careful about this kind of thing. And the state geologists and state regulators will tell you there's never been an instance of induced seismicity caused by hydraulic fracturing in the entire state of California. You have had, in other states like Oklahoma and Ohio, some cases where there have been very, very small, kind of unable to feel on the surface earthquakes, or seismicity at least, caused by something called wastewater injection, which is common in many industrial practices, from semiconductors to oil and gas, where you have wastewater and sometimes you inject it at depth in order to dispose of it. People have known, engineers have known, that can cause minor seismic events since the 1960s. So that's not news. The only reason it's in the news now is because people are wound up about fracking, which is actually a word it probably wouldn't even be in the lexicon if it didn't sound like another kind of popular word you wouldn't use in polite company. So they use it as a way to attack the oil and gas industry. But in fact, we have never had a fracking-induced earthquake in California, and there's no reason to think that we will.
Yeah, we can do it without the fracking. We can have those earthquakes. We don't need fracking to do that.
We've had earthquakes before fracking.
Yeah.
What about climate change?
Well,
talk about that a lot.
That's actually a great story, and another reason that environmental activists and people who care about climate change, and I'm one of them, should embrace hydraulic fracturing, because it actually has led to, especially because of the development of natural gas back east, which burns cleaner than coal, as we discussed, has led to the United States leading the world. Most people don't know this. We lead the world in greenhouse gas emission reductions because of primarily the increased use of natural gas in power plants, as opposed to other less clean energy sources. Now, the other good news is that even when we hydraulically fracture for oil in places like California, it still reduces our greenhouse gas footprint because we're not importing via train, via tanker from countries halfway around the world. And those countries have laxer environmental standards. So when they're producing, they're contributing to global carbon emissions much more than we are here in California when we're producing.
Yeah,
so it's a good story.
Yeah, we read about it in other countries because they say over here, like Beijing.
Yeah.
I was there, and it wasn't like that.
You can really see the air in Beijing.
Yeah, they chew the air there.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to be importing California's oil from there when we could just as easily produce it here. Now, it's not easy to produce. I don't want to give that impression, or we would be doing more, but there's so much potential here in California, and those that oppose using technology and using innovation to try to tap more of our reserves are being very short-sighted from a climate perspective.
Well, it's because it's their personal deal that they're trying to Don Quixote approach to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. The more honest of the activists do admit that their goal is to stop all fossil fuel production and certainly put the oil and gas business out of business. But as we discussed before, I mean, that's a notion that's so ludicrous it's barely worth discussing.
Let's talk about that, because right now what we're doing is we contribute almost 48,000 total local jobs, and we've received in the marketplace $1.2 billion in state and local taxes, which means a good economy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And with more than 468,000 direct and indirect jobs, the petroleum industry is responsible for 2.3% of total California employment right here.
Yeah, that's right. And, a recent Fresno State study looked at hydraulic fracturing and its potential. And we'll talk in a minute about how common it really is in California, because it's relatively not that common. But let's say that we were to tap some of the reserves that we're not currently robustly tapping. This Fresno State study said that just in the San Joaquin Valley, which, as you know, is experiencing double-digit unemployment, and it's a very, very, it's a region that's bouncing back, but it needs all the help it can get.
Well, a lot of that is farm too.
That's true. That's true. But
seasonal. Yeah,
but a lot of the same sorts of good-paying jobs that are created in the oil and gas industry are the same kind of jobs that are created in agriculture, and the people can be used as well. And this Fresno State study said that 195,000 new jobs could be created just in the next decade or so, and as much as $22 billion in personal income gains could happen. And there have been other studies by USC and other institutions that have suggested the numbers are much, much higher. But to be conservative, those are the kind of numbers we're looking at. And that would be an economic renaissance for this area.
Yeah, what's the state that's doing the fracking that had it's like a gold rush?
North Dakota. Yeah, North Dakota legislators woke up one day to find, I think it was $1.5 billion in surplus they weren't even expecting, attributable to the development there. So it's the lowest unemployment in the country.
Well, they don't have that many people.
Well, that's true. That's true.
They're getting more all the time.
They're bringing them in. They're bringing them in, and the revenues are going through the roof. So that's great. Of course, Texas is booming.
Mm-hmm.
The ground in Texas hasn't changed. So what's changed is the technology. So once hydraulic fracturing was invented by a guy down there named George Mitchell, then they were able to extract resources from places they couldn't do it before. And the same thing is true in California. There hasn't been any prohibition on fracking. The reason that we're not tapping all of the reserves in California is not because we're not allowed to do it. It's because we probably haven't developed the technology or the innovation to do it yet. But the oil and gas industry doesn't stop innovating. So at some point we will, and we know that there are 400 billion barrels of oil in the Monterey Shale. So at some point, I think we can count on the ingenuity of the industry to help develop at least some of that.
400 billion.
Yeah, it's the largest oil reserve in the world. As far as we know, it's 2/3 of the oil in the United States if it were recoverable.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge. That would meet our demands for quite some time.
Certainly would.
Yep. It's amazing that, next quarter hour, we're going to get into some of the myths. But right now, what we're looking at is an economic bonus that can be had here. And I have lunch every Friday with farmers and dairymen and stuff like that. They're part of my fishing group. They let me be part of their group. But anyway, they are all for it. Mm-hmm. Everybody I've talked to is for it. So I haven't talked to any environmentalists, obviously.
Yeah, well, you're talking to one now. I mean, when you drive through Kern County and when you drive through the Central Valley and you see oil and gas operations alongside, if not in the middle of agricultural operations. And you don't see the carnage that, environmentalists, extremist activists, I should say, are trying to portray. But you see how this is working really well, that things can happen on the surface and things can happen miles underground and they can work together. It becomes pretty clear that there's no real conflict there. In addition, there's the issue of water production, which we talked about before. In many cases, the oil and gas industry actually helps agriculture with water. And maybe we can talk about water use later when we talk about myths, because some people try to make up a conflict between agriculture and oil, and there just isn't one.
Nope, because as we talked earlier, doing this actually creates water.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Yes, it does, and that's very helpful with our water table drop.
Yeah.
The way it has.
To be fair, I mean, a lot of that is wastewater, but that's injected under strict regulations. But there are places where the industry is a net water producer.
Yeah, but we treat the wastewater, so that's not really a problem here.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of fracking, and part of it is you can call and ask the people that are involved with it about what it is and what it does if you have any questions, because it is a tremendous bonus for the entire state of California, and particularly Kern County, where 70% of the California oil is produced.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's sort of a miracle when you think about it. You have all these billions of barrels of oil in Texas, in North Dakota, in California that weren't available. People were talking about, in the 1970s, peak oil, and were we running out? And now we're producing more than we've ever produced before, and reserves are higher than they've ever been before. So this is good news. It's not the Wild West. We don't have to not worry about climate change and things like that. But what it is the potential to create jobs, to increase revenue, and also to ensure that we're producing a resource that we need under the right kind of regulation, rather than increasing our dependence on countries that are being environmentally destructive.
Yeah, it's really we're taking advantage of something that we need to do for our children and our children's children.
That's right.
Because it's going to be a long process to get all those billions of barrels of oil out of the ground and into use.
Exactly.
Okay, we're talking today about fracking, and we're talking with Dave Quast, the California Director of Energy in Depth, and we'll be back in a moment. We're going to get rid of some of these myths. Give us a call by calling 842-KERN.
Or 800-640-5576.
Okay, this is about 8 minutes.
News Talk 1180 with Michael Savage and the Savage Nation. Weekdays starting at 6 p.m. News Talk 1180 KERN.
With cheaper home prices, lower mortgage rates, and big discounts on foreclosures, buyers now have plenty of incentives to get into the real estate market. Coldwell Banker Preferred can help you determine your buying power. They have many resources to assist you in your home search, and they can help you negotiate. The professionals at Coldwell Banker Preferred will guide you through the closing process and make sure everything flows together smoothly. Trust Coldwell Banker Preferred for the most experienced professionals in the market. Coldwell Banker Preferred sells more houses in Bakersfield and Kern County than anyone else. They have 3 locations to serve you: Coldwell Banker Preferred Ming Avenue, Coldwell Banker Preferred Coffee Road, or Coldwell Banker West Wind. Phone 616-3600, 616-3600. Coldwell Banker Preferred. Expect the best.
All right, folks, summer is here, and there is nothing worse than going through a hot Bakersfield summer in a car or truck that you cannot count on. That's why I want you to go see my friends at North Bakersfield Toyota Scion sooner than later. Here's some good reasons for that. First of all, Toyota's best-selling car company in the world, and for very good reason. Rock-solid reliability, fuel economy, dependability, you name it, they check a lot of boxes. And they've got the full line of all the latest and greatest in Toyotas and Scions out there at North Bakersfield Toyota, right out there at Freeway 99 and 7th Standard. And if you need a pre-owned car, if you want the best deal and you want to make sure you get a car that is thoroughly inspected and ready for you to enjoy, man, do they specialize at that also at North Bakersfield Toyota Scion. They do not get beat on deals. I don't care where you go. You can drive anywhere you want. You're not going to beat the deals right out here north of town at North Bakersfield Toyota Scion. You need a new pickup to haul your toy hauler around, an SUV, a 50 MPG plus Prius, whatever you're looking for, they've got it, and you're going to get your best deal just north of town, 7th Standard and Freeway 99. It's North Bakersfield Toyota Scion.
on. Hey, look, everybody, it's Gino Valpredo from Luigi's Restaurant and Old World Delicatessen. You know what people ask me all the time, Gino? What is your favorite part of the restaurant? Like, for example, what's your favorite part of the deli?
Ralph, my favorite part of the deli has got to be our selection of great cheeses. It's just super easy to take a piece of cheese home, snack on it either before dinner or actually make a dinner out of it. Real buffalo mozzarella from Campania, Italy is great this time of year with tomatoes, and you could get prosciutto di Parma and take it home. It's great with all the different melons. Grab a bottle of white, crisp wine, a great selection that my sister has over there, an easy Italian red.
And you know, my favorite is the Midnight Moon.
I knew that was your favorite. The aged goat cheese. Midnight Moon is unbelievable cheese.
In the restaurant, you know, my daily special is the prime rib sandwich. What's your favorite?
I do love the clam linguine on Fridays. Our fish specials have been fantastic. All kinds of fun stuff. Every day they're doing something different.
Luigi's Old World Restaurant and Delicatessen, located at 725 East 19th Street. Open 8 to 4 in the deli, 11 to 2:30 in the restaurant. That's right, Gino.
That's right, Ralph.
You're listening to the Real Estate Hour on KERN Radio. News Talk 1180. You can call in at 842-KERN or 800-640-KERN. Once again, Stan Ferguson.
What the fuck is going on with all this fracking going on? I think we need some facts to come on tonight. I know we want energy, but nothing ever comes for free. I think my wall is on fire tonight.
Yes, Stan Ferguson along with Zulfa from Coldwell Banker. And we're talking this morning Dave Quast. I want to make sure I pronounce this right. We're going to go through some of the myths, and some of these things we've already talked a little bit about, but let's do them in order, and that'd be a good reminder on what we did cover. The first unsubstantiated fear is hydraulic fracturing is new, untested, and dangerous.
Yeah, first of all, I've never heard that song before, and it's going to haunt my dreams. It's a little scary.
You've heard it before?
No, I haven't. That's frightening. And like I said before, if not for the pun potential, I really don't think this would be much of an issue. So to your question, hydraulic fracturing has been safely used to enhance oil extraction in California for more than 50 years, and it's been used in the country for close to 70 years. And actually, most of the oil production in California is done without hydraulic fracturing because of that geological faulting I talked about before. It's often just not the appropriate well completion technique. These decisions are made well by well, and often we don't need to use it because of the nature of our rock formations to get the oil out. It's about a quarter of the wells that we hydraulically fracture. And like I said, over 90% of them are in western Kern County. In fact, in areas of Kern County with no population centers and no potable groundwater. So, you know, the concerns about this from a California perspective are overblown.
We have a deal here, some cases where when they get a new well, they have to shut another one down.
I wasn't aware of that.
Progressive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go. But anyway, so it's a very old technique. It's well understood. It's routine. There was a letter actually sent to Governor Brown by 21 scientists and engineers and technical experts recently, and they wrote, quote, "In our research, we found nothing to suggest that shale development poses risks that are unknown or can't be managed and mitigated with available technologies, best practices, and smart regulation." And I think that's exactly right.
Okay. There's another unsubstantiated fear. California doesn't have strong regulations to protect the environment and communities from hydraulic fracturing.
Yeah, and again, as I said before, not only have we been a highly regulated industry for decades, but we just recently passed, and the Department of Conservation and the Division of Oil and Gas are in the process of finalizing the strictest hydraulic fracturing regulations in the country. So even if you thought that the decades previous we weren't regulated enough, here we are, in a state, by the way, that Jerry Brown is the governor of, not known as unprogressive on environmental issues. Yes. Even if you thought we weren't regulated enough, now we have these stringent regulations that I went over earlier. We're going to have all the disclosure that anyone could want if they want to know when it's happening, where it's happening, what's in the particular mix of fluids, again, 99.5% water and sand that are being used. So I wouldn't be surprised, because this is how it's been in the past, that even though you have availability of information to activists, I don't think you're going to find, and doctors and so on, you're not going to find a flood probably of requests to actually look this stuff up. I think just claiming it doesn't exist is what they trade on. But this information will be available to anyone who wants it. So we do have very strict regulations in California.
Yeah. And the other this is real important since we're going through such wonderful dry years. Gosh, this is 5th year of a drought. A lot of people will say, I'm sure they'll say that they're using a lot of water.
Yeah. Again, completely untrue. In fact, the amount is nothing is unimportant water-wise in California, to be clear, but the amount of water used in hydraulic fracturing is negligible compared to other uses. For a little bit of perspective, the amount of water used in the 830 wells that were hydraulically fractured in 2013 in California was 323 acre feet. That's not per well. That's how many acre feet were used in the entire state in the entire year. And for perspective, that's about as much water as one California golf course, of which we have, I think, close to 2,000, uses in one day. That's it.
Just
so
keep
it's
it green.
It's 0.0005% of water use in California. And not to mention that, of course, oil and gas produces water. So the amount of water used in hydraulic fracturing here is very, very small. Back east, it's a couple million gallons. But even where it's a couple million gallons, it's still less than 1% of the water use in those jurisdictions, and that's according to the Groundwater Protection Council.
Another fear, hydraulic fracturing pollutes our groundwater and our soil and produces risk to nearby residents.
The fact is, this process takes place thousands of feet underground.
Yeah,
so
that amazed me.
Yeah, so it's highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely that the process itself could contaminate either water or soil. Now, of course, it does happen in a well, and there are very strict well integrity regulations that help to ensure that well casings don't fail, and there are many layers to the wells, and there's cement and everything else protecting the public. Now, like I said, this has been done in California since the 50s. And during that time, there just hasn't been a case, and it's been studied extensively, where this has been a problem. There was a study in 2004 by the EPA that concluded, quote, there was little to no risk of fracturing fluid contaminating underground sources of drinking water during hydraulic fracturing. And a study of the Inglewood oil field, which is the largest urban oil field in the United States and probably the most studied in the United States and LA, examined 14 environmental risk factors, everything from seismicity or earthquakes to water contamination to air we're used to using those words, water contamination, air contamination, subsidence, and concluded there weren't any adverse impacts in any of those areas. So it's just not really true that there's that there's much reason to be concerned. But then again, accidents happen, problems happen, so it's important that we have regulation. There's no new thing happening that requires more regulation than we have now.
Now, we want you to understand that producing all this oil is not going to be the only source we have to have. The myth is that taking advantage of oil reserves will somehow slow or stop continued development of solar, wind, and other alternative energy sources. That's really false.
Yeah. I mean, stopping oil production isn't going to reduce our demand for energy. Like I said before, we're the third largest consumer of gas and diesel in the country. So all that would do is require that we import more foreign oil to keep the state moving and our economy growing. We already have the most ambitious renewable energy goals in the country. And existing laws, regulations, and customer demand are going to continue or ensure continued development and expansion of renewables. But in the meantime, 96% of our transportation fuels are fossil fuel based. And we just, we have to recognize that it's not going to be a quick shift toward renewables. It's going to take a long time, and we're better off environmentally producing our oil here than we are importing it. And we're going to have to do one or the other.
Well, another unsubstantiated fear. Hydraulic fracturing is bad for the environment and will hurt efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Right, and as I said before, I mean, it's fracking that's allowing us to tap the country's abundant, clean natural gas reserves, which burn 50% cleaner than the alternative, and that's reduced our carbon footprint and reduced greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. faster than any other country, which is a staggering thing when you think about it. We're a huge country, we're a huge consumer of oil, and a huge producer, yet we lead the world in greenhouse gas emissions. There should be parades about this. This is an environmental success story like you wouldn't believe, and that's because of natural gas development primarily, also because of domestic production of oil. But because natural gas requires hydraulic fracturing, even formerly more sensible environmental groups like the Sierra Club, which used to support natural gas because it was cleaner, now oppose it because fracking, I think, sounds like another word. That's all I can come up with. So it's gotten to a crazy place where leading the world in greenhouse gas emissions isn't enough.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Well, and the thing is, in California, I think it's against the law to walk. They have cars. Everything is transportation because everything is far apart. And that's important. Let's talk about some of the facts. One of the facts, safe hydraulic fracturing increases California's energy independence and keeps jobs and revenue in the state.
Yeah, that's right, which is why we should seek, using technology and innovation, we should seek to increase the amount that we produce here in California rather than importing it from elsewhere.
Okay, we have time. One more fact. Go ahead.
How about hydraulic fracturing increases the risk of earthquakes?
Well, again, a state geologist and the regulators that monitor the industry, and of course the industry itself, have all said that there's never been a case of hydraulic fracturing causing an earthquake in California. Earthquakes or seismicity was one of the things that was studied in that Inglewood oil field study, and it was found to have no. I mean, anything you do in the ground is going to create a vibration, but you don't have felt seismic events that you can feel above the water. They're called microseismic events. Mark Zoback of Stanford University said the amount of energy released by hydraulic fracturing is the same as a gallon of milk being dropped off the kitchen counter. So that's the kind of energy release we're talking about.
Okay, we're running out of time. Very interesting. I've learned a lot, like I always do. This show just brings me all kinds of information. And now I've got the correct stuff, so if anybody out there wants to get to check and make sure that we've got the right information, and call Pam, or you can give Dave Quast a call. Dave, you got a number for him?
Yeah, sure. I can be reached at 213-452-6348 or Dave at energyindepth.org.
Yeah, that's probably the fastest way.
That would be the fastest, yes.
Email will definitely be the fastest.
And actually, energyindepth.org is a great website for people who want to get all the facts on shale development in general and hydraulic fracturing around the country. It's a good kind of a clearinghouse for all the facts and all the studies.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming up here.
It's been my pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Dave.
Let's go out and suntan down here.
Probably really hot outside right now.
Yes, it is.
You have that to look forward to on your drive home.
Exactly.
And we can't talk anymore because we've run out of time.
Yeah, it was great to be
Ferguson and Pam Zulfa from Coldwell Banker. And we'll be back again next week. Give us a call with at work with any questions, and make sure you do go out and buy a house.
Yes, definitely.
Last word.
Of course, I'm a woman.
This is KERN 1180 Bakersfield, an American General Media radio station. On the air at 1180 AM. Online at KERNradio.com.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. Hamas issuing a warning that it will be releasing fierce missile strikes on Tel Aviv this hour. The UN Security Council calling for an end to the violence in the Middle East,